Hey everyone, Geek here, to tell you the impossible. I have actually compiled a list of 10 things that the prequels did better than the originals. Wait! Please don't already hit the dislike button. Let me explain. I personally like the original trilogy much better than the prequel trilogy, but I still believe there are some good things that the prequels actually did better than the first three. Although I have been thinking of doing an episode similar to this for quite a while, I want to give thanks to Corbin Crutchley for the idea. Any of you can suggest video ideas that will definitely be considered to be in an episode. So, to get on with the video, please don't hate me for this. Anyone can have their own opinion, and I found these 10 points extremely hard to find, so some may seem like I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel. But no matter what some people may say, I do think the prequels are good movies, just not as good as the originals. So it wasn't the hardest thing to find good things about the prequels, but what they actually did better. Let's get on with the video so you can start disputing in the comments. As much as we love the original trilogy lightsaber fights, the duels in the prequels were much better. They're more action-packed, better choreographed, and all around better. These fights are much faster than the originals. Of course, in episodes 4 through 6, we didn't need crazy backflips or double-sided swords. We knew the emotion of the battles were what made them very good. In fact, fantastic. Even if it really was just a couple of old guys whacking sticks together. But since the prequels were slightly lacking in story and plot, the lightsaber fights had to be that much better to draw us in. The lightsaber action of the prequels is fast-paced, thrilling, and better than the originals. I love the stormtroopers as much as the next geek, but they just can't shoot. Clone troopers, on the other hand, are sharpshooting machines. If you had to choose an army to go to war with, would you choose the shoot and miss stormtroopers or the clone troopers who never miss their mark? You have to admit that stormtroopers aren't that great, even if they are a big part of Star Wars. Ewoks can even defeat stormtroopers. Think about it, clones can kill armed Jedi Masters, while stormtroopers can't even beat 3-foot-tall teddy bears. Sure, on the Death Star, stormtroopers have a headbanging good time, but clones get the job done. I can't imagine what happens to the stormtroopers to make them miss so often. They came from clones, so what happened? Did they just become old? Here's a picture of a clone trooper, and here's one of a stormtrooper. The soldiers in the prequels are by far better than the originals. When you watch the original trilogy, you know who to root for. We have the Rebellion, who are obviously the good guys, and the Empire, who are the bad guys. Of course we should know this, right? Well, some say it's better not to be given everything, to make some parts up in your own imagination. The prequels allow us to do that. We know Anakin Skywalker will become Darth Vader, who is evil, but we want him to get up to that point because he's good at the same time. When you see Obi-Wan Kenobi, you should immediately think good guy, but when you see Anakin, you may not know what to think. He should be good, but he ends up being bad, even though we've been rooting for him the whole time. I know it's confusing, but the point I'm trying to get across is that there really is no good or evil in the prequels, which is good. Or is it evil? Because we're saying it's good to know what's good or bad, but we are clearly stating that it's good to do this, disagreeing with the good point, therefore making it bad. But I digress. Anyways, seeing the story from both sides opens our minds to something new, and episodes 4, 5, and 6 didn't do that. The unsureness of the prequels is new and by far better than the originals. When episodes 4, 5, and 6 first came out, their visuals were fantastic. They had the best special effects of their time, but by now the stop-motion creatures and chroma keyed ships are a little outdated. As much as I love seeing a Tauntaun run choppily across Hoth, even I have to admit that the prequels can do much better. If we take episode 1 for example, in 1999 people were really only using CGI to make small background items or creatures, but Phantom Menace used CGI to create whole cities or worlds, spaceships, and aliens. So Star Wars has always been ahead of the game in the special effects department, but the prequels are obviously better in this case. We can always watch the Death Star trench run 1,000 times, but the beginning of episode 3 clearly shows how much better it can get. There may be a bit too much CGI in comparison to practical props, but when you really think about it, prequels definitely win here. The breathtaking CGI of the prequels is better than that of the originals. Boba Fett. Everyone's favorite bounty hunter is one of the coolest characters in the galaxy. Episode 5 brought us this awesome Mandalorian bounty hunter, while episode 2 brought us his predecessor. Jango Fett, believe it or not, is better than Boba Fett. While Boba may have been the original, Jango is a better fighter. Think about it. Jango Fett was actually able to escape from Obi-Wan Kenobi, a Jedi Master, while Boba Fett just flew down on his jetpack, tied up Luke, which did nothing, got his blaster cut in half, then knocked down and flown into a death pit after being hit by a blind man. At least Jango Fett had a more reasonable death. He went out fighting one of the heads of the Jedi Council. Of course, the original Boba Fett is much better than the prequel Boba Fett, which I thought was important to mention. The prequel's Jango Fett is better than the Boba Fett from the originals. Who were the villains in episodes 4, 5, and 6? Well, obviously Darth Vader, and kind of the Emperor, and partially Jabba the Hutt and Grand Moff Tarkin, I guess. But that's it. It's really only Darth Vader. Now what about the prequels? We obviously have the Emperor, Count Dooku, General Grievous, Nute Gunray, and the Trade Federation, Poggle the Lesser, Watto, Sebulba, Jango Fett, Zam Wesell, Darth Maul, and Anakin Skywalker. Wow, there are a lot more villains to mention from the prequels. Which is good. It means there isn't just one big bad guy who wants to rule the world, or in this case, galaxy. You actually get a lot of very unique and interesting villains trying at everything to stop our heroes. Instead of just Emperor Palpatine being the super evil mastermind, we have his minions,
Count Dooku,
who have their minions,
hello there,
and their minions,
Roger, roger.
and so on and so on. In the original trilogy, I guess we got the Emperor's minions and his minions and their minions, but it didn't stretch past that. In the prequels, we got to see an ongoing villain family tree connecting many villains, not including the very small ones. The widespread amount of villains in the prequels are better than the originals. Everyone talks about how much they love Luke, Han, and Leia, and their acting. But quite honestly, lots of the acting in the original trilogy seems lifeless and dull. I mean, listen to this dialogue.
Governor Tarkin, I should have expected to find you holding Vader's leash.
I recognized your foul stench when I was brought on board.
Humans don't say that kind of stuff. The reaction to things in this trilogy is so inhuman. The most emotional scene in episodes 4 through 6 would be Luke learning the truth about his father. Leia barely blinks when her own planet blows up. Luke takes 2 seconds to get over the fact that he made out with his sister, and he doesn't even make a noise when he sees the dead, burning corpses of his aunt and uncle who raised him from childhood. Anakin or Padme, on the other hand, actually have human emotions. When something bad happens, they react accordingly. You see a lot more expression in the prequels, which is good. It's almost as if the original trilogy cast are robots. No, not those two, them. The emotion of the prequels is much better than the originals. Tatooine, Hoth, Endor, and Dagobah. 4 of my top 5 favorite planets in the galaxy. But when you think about it, the prequels do a much better job with their environment. Of course, the original trilogy did a fantastic job at expanding around a very confined space, but the prequels gave us a much bigger look at a much bigger galaxy. The many environments that we see constantly through episodes 1 through 3 really further our views of the Star Wars universe. They have almost every terrain type you could possibly think of. Instead of bringing us to a few planets that we only see small portions of, they travel us all over the galaxy to hundreds of planets. There's not much more to say, they're just more diverse and fun to watch. The environments of the prequels are better than the originals. The role of Emperor Palpatine in the original trilogy is mysterious and unknown, but his role in the prequels is cunning and genius. If you compare the Emperor's planning from the original trilogy to the prequel trilogy, there's an obvious difference. His only plan in the original trilogy was to get out with the old and in with the new. He wanted Luke to kill off his old apprentice, Darth Vader, just like he asked Vader to kill off Dooku. The Emperor's plan in the prequels was far more advanced. He figured out a way to slowly gain the power he wanted. Even when things didn't go exactly as planned, he kept his cool, stayed in character as the friendly old Chancellor, and remedied the mistake via cloaked hologram. I've always wondered where the Emperor films those little messages. Do you think he's just filming them in his local gym like,
Hey, Newt, remember that deal we had about you being freed and given all the money you want? Yes? Well, slight change of plans. You're going down to Naboo to take over Theed Palace. No, why not the whole planet? Where you'll travel from one side of Naboo to the other, and eventually be captured by 2 Jedi Knights, where I will then laugh at your stupidity in my second identity as Chancellor. You're a real... Well, I've got to get back to my crunches. My personal trainer is waiting. See you on Naboo.
the prequel Emperor is generally better than the original. Have you ever watched the original trilogy and felt a feeling of incompletion? You learn all of this stuff about Vader, Yoda, and Obi-Wan's past, yet never learn about it. And you never get to know what happens to Luke, Han, and Leia after they get off of Endor. But with the prequels, you know what happens to the characters in the end, which some argue is a bad thing. Sometimes it's better not to know so you can create your own story. But the satisfaction of knowing that these are the roots of all of Star Wars is quite satisfying. At the end of episode 3, we knew it was the end of the beginning, yet the start of the middle. The satisfaction of knowing that that was it is very nice and satisfying. There's not much more to say than there are some things about the prequels that are better than the originals. So that wraps up the ideas of how there are some things about the prequels that beat out the first 3 films. Subscribe to Star Geek for weekly Star Wars content. If you agree with the list or disagree, why don't you just shoot that like button at light speed? You can go check out my Facebook page, linked in the description below, as it really helps me out when you like my page. If you go over to the page, you will get daily news on Star Wars Episode 7, Star Geek episodes, memes, and even the prequels. Try clicking on the screen to subscribe, and click on the link to the left for my last video, where I reveal the new Star Geek channel mascot. You can also click on the right to watch the best to worst Star Wars movies. Don't forget to like the video, and comment your own list below the video. Until we meet again in a galaxy far, far away, this has been Star Geek.